Hello, welcome back to the David Watson podcast and my very different headphones, which, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to grow into this colour or not. They are mint green, blue, but yeah, I had to replace my headphones and these looked really good, but I'm not sure I have the complexion for them. But anyway, this morning I spoke with Harold. Harold has written a couple of books about his life, times and upbringing. And just the people that can share humour about really traumatic times are just the best human beings in the world. I hope you enjoy the episode. Good morning. Welcome to the David Watson podcast. It's nice to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm very well. And I guess we'll start with the rise and read as it's all behind you. And we're going to be talking about your book.
Right.
But something I wanted to just check with first before we kind of get into the whys of the book is, and this came from your publicist, there's a line in the book that said how a contract air controller serving in war-torn Afghanistan, Iraq and Guantanamo Bay found that experience more peaceful than his dysfunctional childhood. And my question is, because obviously, and this is away from the book, is if you ask somebody in the general public, the general sphere around the globe, what Iraq and Afghanistan was like to live in and work in, I would probably give you something, I would explain something to you that you probably don't recognise.
You said you could explain something I wouldn't recognize?
Yeah, because
Or,
I think everybody around the world imagines everything we see on newsreels. That must be what living in and working in Iraq and Afghanistan is like. And yet people must actually be
right,
working there, getting on with their everyday lives. And there must be areas that aren't war zones, you know.
right. It's weird. And one thing I realized the military do kind of, they kind of found a spot how far they can go. And they kind of, I guess you could say, kind of camp out until they can proceed further.
Yeah.
It's like the movie A Few Good Men. I think Jack Nicholson said something about,
Yeah.
I sleep, right where the enemy are trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And I'm not military, but taking it all in, I guess being around it, I've learned that that's kind of what they do. They go as far as they can to a point and they sleep, live, coexist right next to the enemy until they can go further.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way it had been here.
So that's what I mean. So I would imagine like you have an awareness of where, okay, we stay away from that. But everything behind that line
Right,
is probably normal, peaceful living,
right.
just under an unusual umbrella of protection.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. So what exactly is it you do then, or as much as you can talk about?
Well, I'm an air traffic controller.
Okay.
And and back to that statement about me finding peace or more peace than being at home, it's like I grew up, dysfunctional, and I knew for the most part every day was gonna be chaotic.
Mm.
I was never at peace until I was about, well, I guess say college, but you're still concerned because that's kind of illusion, you don't really have a job,
Yeah.
you're kind of trying to find something, right? Uh, so I was never, I guess, really at peace until I was about 28 when I was over into my career. But yeah, like I said, every day was, my mom was schizophrenic. I never know how far it would go, what would unravel. You put that with the poverty and what being over here. Um, if there was an explosion, life was just kind of normal.
Yeah.
It was somewhat predictable. But in my childhood, it never was. It was just dysfunctional. You didn't know how dysfunctional the next day would be.
Yeah.
You know.
Were there moments or elements of peace from your childhood?
playing baseball. I mentioned being in the Boy Scout for a short period. Um, and that was short-lived. I think baseball was probably the biggest joy as a kid. Yeah.
So where, because I'm in the UK, so I don't play baseball. What age were you playing baseball at?
I played from about 10 to about 13.
10 to about 13. So I'm trying
Mhm.
to understand the, because it's really easy sometimes to understand the adult, but when you're a child, the thing that's really difficult when you're in having these experiences is you can, well, there's two things that I think is difficult, and I'm definitely open to being corrected. One is that you look at other families and you see how those children
Oh,
are living, and you're like, and then
right.
you're looking at yours and you're like, okay, this, it can be different. I'm not sure we always know whether one is right or wrong, but we know there's one we prefer to have. And the other
Oh,
element,
yeah.
yeah, and the other element is you, even though you can see a difference, you know that you're going to have to take care of yourself when other kids are being taken care of. So I'm kind of
Right.
trying to understand, or is there an element like you found peace in baseball for a few years, from like 10 to 13?
Yes.
So, like, if you're getting up in the morning and you're getting ready, was there like, what was that shift in mentality and the urgency to get there and enjoy the moment? And there was, and I'll give you an example of what I mean, which might not be that relevant, but I remember
That's
talking to,
okay.
a friend, and we're adults, and he has his own
Hmm.
business, and I was really busy running some stuff at the time, and we both surf, and him and I were talking about there's these odd moments because we're pretty shitty surfers, but there's these odd moments where it all lines up and we get it right. And you've got about 10 or 15 seconds where him and I are talking about this silence in our mind. And we're just doing what we're doing. And everything else that's going on in the world that's chaotic that we normally deal with has disappeared. And it's peaceful. And there was like 8 or 9 friends with us, and none of them understood what he and I were on about. They're like, what do you mean? But he and I were talking about we couldn't shut the chaos off in our head. And when we surfed, there were moments when we're just like, this is what peace feels like. But to everyone else, it was just that was everyday living, and that's what I'm saying. So
I know what you mean.
yeah, so I just want to kind of understand that routine of
Yeah.
like, so like you wake up in the morning, you know you've got to go, you're going to play baseball. So what's the routine? What's breakfast? What's
Right.
lacing up your shoes? Because there's that whole, it's almost like getting ready for prayer. Do you know, like, okay, I'm now going to kind of get into a soul state. I don't know if that's the right way, but I'm trying to understand it.
No, no, you're right. You're right. You're right because it's like every day, it's like you being belittled. You knew you're just poor. Like I said, my mom was schizophrenic, and any way that she could, I guess, kind of pick at people, pick at me, whatever, or get into her episode, it would happen. But when you're playing baseball, your focus is on that ball, that game, that person, that pitcher. Like you said, it blocked out all the other noise.
Yeah.
And you're right.
And
Yeah.
and do you remember when, like, when you were playing baseball? If yeah, because like I said, I'm going to sound like a right idiot because I don't, I know
That's
baseball when
okay.
I see it in a clip, but I don't really know positions, and I know someone throws a ball, another person hits it, and people run around.
Somewhat like cricket. Somewhat like cricket.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But
Okay. Okay.
I want to. Do you remember any of the moments or the feelings when you either caught a ball, got somebody out, pitched well, or hit the ball well, and you've got that crowd cheering for you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was heaven.
Yeah,
It was because I fit in no other place. I was always being ridiculed. I was always being bullied. I was always, you know, hungry. I was always, being embarrassed.
Yeah.
But that moment when I did some great and people liked me and I felt good or I knew the eyes were on me for a good reason. Oh man, I loved it. Loved it.
Because it's difficult, isn't it? Because you can find yourself through life because of moments like that, which just feel amazing. Because people that you, families that you probably want to be like, people that you really admire, they're giving you this affection and this attention, and then it can kind of turn you into a people pleaser because you kind of like crave something that you can't get from home.
And you're right. And you're right. You're right. It's a high that I wasn't used to be honest.
Yeah,
And then as you hear if your athletes say, and I'm sure you know some of you say, you're always chasing that high from that point. Then
yeah, yeah. It is,
yeah,
and it creates its own dogma inside your own head because you're like, oh,
right.
were there moments where you did connect with your mum as a child, where it was actually,
We rarely connected. Yeah, I mean, my mom was in her own world, and she, how do I say? I hate to say picked on,
no,
but kind of used me more of an example than any of the other kids. And I
mm,
had three other brothers, and so I caught the brunt of it, and I caught the brunt of it too because I was more studious. I was more. I would go to school all the time. All my other brothers, they quit or would
yeah,
cut school, and so I was the one that I guess if she could have broken me, maybe I would have quit school and maybe start work. I guess bring money in the house or whatever. And that wasn't my vision. I mean, the only little joy I got also was school. I did well in school. You know,
mm,
Other kids that didn't like me didn't like it, but I like getting at least decent grades and, kind of like got a chance to stand with the kids that are making good grades. So once again, you got a chance to be seen doing something that gave you some satisfaction.
that yourself as a child must have been a tough cookie.
It was. It was. It's amazing. I mean, even to myself. And the weirdest thing, and I kick myself to this day, and this is weird, that I didn't have the strength to run away.
Yeah,
The reason I didn't, I couldn't think of a place to go where I would be safe.
yeah.
I was smart enough to know it's safer here than going, say, Chicago and on the streets, or to go to Dallas and hope you can find a YMCA or someplace. I was smart enough to know that, nah, you don't want to take those chances.
But it's difficult if I'm thinking like what I was like because we always imagine ourselves as children of being really scared because we're kind of reactive to our environment. And but when you look back as an adult, you think, okay, you've got a mum giving you not much support, giving you a lot of crap. You're getting bullied at school. I'm going to imagine your brothers didn't exactly support the academic lifestyle, but some may have been kinder about it than others. But to have that strength, that steel inside you, that this is what I'm going to do. I know it's like, yeah, but there's peace there. But that peace comes up against huge resistance on a daily basis. So
Right,
every
right,
day you've got to kind of storm the castle to get past the defenses so you can get inside to be
right,
safe. Do you know what I mean?
right,
It's like a game resetting. Every time you go to bed, you're like, all right, the game starts again tomorrow, doesn't it? When I wake up.
right, right. Exactly, exactly. It was, yeah, it was a challenge. And I I made it. So I'm proud of it. But by the same token, it was a challenge, and I I, I can't explain it except well, there's two things. And one, my dad was a school principal and they had no relationship, but somehow I found this out at a young age. So somewhere it ingrained in me that I was bigger than who I was,
Yeah.
even though I had no relationship with him, but that guy's my dad,
Yeah.
you know, and somehow it made me feel like I was somebody. And the other thing I knew, I guess, my plan, I had to come a plan to survive. My plan was if I could survive 12 years, 12 school, 12 years of school, I can make it from there. If I can get out of here, get to college, I can make it. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was set in my mind at a young age, just survive this, and get to college, and we'll go from there. We'll put up a different fight from there,
Oh,
and that's exactly what happened.
and where was college?
I started out at went to Mississippi State first, Mississippi State University, and then I went to Jackson State and got an additional degree there, and kind of threw both of them away and went into air traffic control. You know,
Wow.
Spent 7 years of school and dumped it and got in air traffic control.
Yeah, but
It's kind of weird.
yeah, but it's not a conventional life, is it?
Right,
Because
right.
you can imagine the
But
flip side to that. If you had the conventional life, that then there'd have been a part of you that's like, well,
right,
I've worked for this. I can't now go and do air traffic control. I'm supposed to do something else. Whereas there's
right,
possibly a chance that because of the life you were like, you could see just opportunities, and I don't need that to define me. I've got an opportunity. This can be my way.
right, right. And that's exactly what happened. I'm like, um, I could have stayed in kind of in my field that I went to school, and I started to see the dollars. I'm gonna be honest. I like, and it started to be, why not? It's like, you know, and it's like you've been sort of a gambler your life. You're like, they make a little bit more money. Why not? You know. So I started to pursue it. You know?
But hey, I swear I had this conversation with my niece recently, and I was really impressed. She's 14 years old, and as you can imagine, I'm not the easiest person to talk to if you're 14 years of age, right? Because I want to know the ins and
Okay.
outs. I want to know everything. But she actually had
Okay.
a bit of a life plan, and I said to her, I was really impressed with that. And
Mhm.
but she was talking about college, universities, but she wants to travel and she wants to do all of this. And I just said, and it's about that thing about the dollars, because I don't care what country you're in. Money is what makes your life comfortable. Okay,
Exactly.
people that say money doesn't make you happy have never been poor. Do
Right. There you go.
you
There
know what
you
I mean?
go.
Because there's a difference between living within your means and not having enough money.
Mhm.
But when people are out there like, oh, rent's due on Friday, yeah, I ain't got any rent. I wonder where I'm going to live next week. That's not, there's no fun in that.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Right.
And I was saying to her about, like, if you're going to go to college, if you're going to go to university, that's absolutely fantastic. But none of
Hmm.
those people are going to give you a job. So make sure whatever you
Hmm.
train in pays well.
Right.
Otherwise, you're better off just getting a job and going up the ladder. Do you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
figure that out,
You're right.
because dollars are important. And
Right.
you don't want to spend 5 years learning to do something and find out that the person that works in a supermarket is going to earn the same money as you.
There you go.
And
There you go.
we don't
Yeah.
teach enough of that anymore. Because like you said,
Right.
yeah, you had all of the, gone to college, you've done great. Oh, air traffic control pays well. I'm your man. Where do I sign?
That's exactly what happened. Because I had no idea what it was,
Yeah.
but I knew about the security and I knew about the money. Like, yeah, we're gonna roll the dice one more time.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
rolled that dice, double sixes, and I'm good.
Exactly.
So how long have you been
Exactly.
doing air traffic control for?
Oh God. I started I'll say about the mid '80s,
Yeah.
and I'm still doing it now. It's been a while.
So,
Yeah.
if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
Ah, wow. I hate to say it for people that my fans, but I'm 65.
Damn, you're looking good.
65. I appreciate it, and I work at that too. No,
It's working. I'm
yeah.
50. I'm 50, and I thought you and I were about the same age. And if you'd have said you were younger than me, I'd have believed you. Damn.
Okay,
You,
yeah,
you
I got you.
no, man.
Well, I work at it. I'm right now. I consider myself going through lifestyle change. Work, exercise, and diet. So I work at it out of it. I mean, and hereditary. Hereditary.
Yeah,
I normally have a sunny disposition. Things like that. That I think help. You know.
yeah, but from one man to another, you got to praise a guy when he looks good for his age.
I appreciate it,
So
sir. I appreciate
you've got to point out, like, damn, no, fair play.
it.
You know.
Okay.
So, so you started. So
Okay.
you started in. Did you say about 85? Where did that? So what was the sort of the timeline that gets you to where we are today?
I did air traffic in Memphis. And worked in Memphis, Tennessee for about 14 years. And then I left there, went to Houston, Texas for about 6. And I kind of lost my job there. It had a big demotion.
Yeah,
So went to a small town for about 4 years and called Monroe, Louisiana. And then in that demotion, I went from my six-figure job to making like a third of what I was making.
yeah,
Okay. So that was painful. That was, divorce and losing your job and feel like you lost your kids. And Afghanistan start came a calling. So, I was kind of broken and so I saw an opportunity, for the money and just getting out of the US, something
yeah,
different.
yeah,
And yeah, jumped on it. And and I talked about in my book, Surviving Chaos, where the book Surviving Chaos, how I found peace at the beach bar, where went to Afghanistan and our camp got attacked by a suicide bomber. And the Taliban had this, I guess you can say, this habit of they'll bomb a place, and once they bombed it, then they're coming after it and shoot everybody that was standing or still alive. So our camp got bombed, and I was in the cafeteria at the time, and so I'm sitting there trying to, we're clearing rubble, and I'm sitting there like, well, I still got two eyes. I can feel my nose. 4, 5, 6, 10. Still got 10 of these. Okay, now the Taliban probably on the way. I need to find a way to hide or get out of here. So I struggled to find my way back to the safe room. And when I mean struggle, trying to make sure I didn't walk in on a massacre or something. And in the process, I'm thinking I'm going to be executed. And during that process, my life started to flash before my eyes. And um, and one of the things that hit me was like, you said you was going to write that book. And I had done it. I said this ever since I was about 14 and had done it. Okay. And at the time, I'm about 55, 56, somewhere in there. Okay. And and I started to pray, after I move on praying, in my head, Lord, if you get me out of here, I'm gonna write that book. So surviving chaos. Obviously I got out, I made it out, wrote the book. And so once I wrote that book, people started asking me about one of the character. The character in this Aunt Kathy. And I talked a lot about how evil she was, how she kept her foot on me, all that. And people kept asking me, email, people I talked to in book tours or whatever. What about this Aunt Kathy character? And then it hit me. Sound like she need a book too.
yeah.
Okay, I like there's more about Aunt Kathy. So then I wrote my current book, my bully, my aunt, and her final gift, and that's the connection of the two books. But that's how my bully, my her final gift came about because people was asking me about that character.
Yeah. So, did you find when you're writing these books, did you find it? or how do you find the experience?
That was easy. I loved it. But both books, the first book is more dramatic than the second. The second book, like my bully, my aunt, and I found a gift, it's more humor. The only thing about my bully, my aunt, and I found a gift, I had to build who she was, which is normal. But it's kind of, it seemed a little mean spirit. But once
Yeah,
I get her built, it's humor, it's lighthearted, it's funny, and that's what I like to entertain.
yeah.
And you kind of feel bad, like, I got to show her as this evil witch, but which she was, but but I'm gonna bring her through it, and we'll see her in a different light, as we go along. Okay.
It's interesting, isn't it, that even now you can feel guilty about telling the truth about someone's character.
Yeah, that's true. But in death, when someone passes, they do talk about your attributes or
Mhm.
the good in you. So, and I had to respect that as much as I could. It took a while, but anybody read the book, it takes a while, but you should look for the good in that person, after they die, no matter how bad it was. And my aunt Kathy she was rough. She was mean. She kept her foot on me. She didn't want me to get in this sunshine beyond my brother. So a lot of that is regurgitated in the book, and and I found the silliness that she did, even though something was quite mean, but I found ways to show it in a humorous way.
Yeah.
And eventually, I won't spoil alert, I won't spoil it, but eventually we found that attribute that she gave.
So, how much do you think that was to do with their upbringing?
Oh, a lot, a lot. She was the oldest, and she had I want to say 8 siblings, and she kind of raised them.
Mm.
So she was never, had a chance to be that girl or be a teenager or whatever, a normal teenager.
Yeah.
And my mom being the youngest, she took advantage of her, I guess, probably the most because she's the baby. She raised my mom, and she just took full advantage.
And
And and go
I was
go
just
ahead,
going to
go
say,
ahead.
because I'm trying to build the picture of when they were. So you were a '60s child, so that they would have been what, '30s, '40s, and '50s.
Yeah, my mom's 32, so my aunt probably a little bit, of course, before maybe, yeah, even before that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you know the, the civil rights movement in America is kind of well documented, but even excluding the civil rights movement, that was a difficult time to be in America because of depression, um, just America being so young, poverty,
right,
poverty in general. There was no welfare systems, there was no medical systems, and I don't think people, regardless of what country you were in, around the world, there was no safety net for anybody. If you couldn't figure out a way to make it,
right.
you were in trouble. So, and I always remember, I can't, I have to apologise because I don't remember the lady's name, but she was on the podcast promoting a book, and she talked about, it was a book about her grandmother, and her grandmother at the age of 13 was married to the farmer next door because the parents were just like, we're too poor for you to live with us anymore, and
Right,
this,
right. Wow.
yeah, and this is, and it wasn't like some seedy thing. He was a young farmer. He was like 19, 20 or something. He was looking for his wife. Her parents were like, hey, we can't feed anybody, and
Right,
this man said he'll marry you. And
right.
but yeah, and you were talking like 100 years ago. It's not some, like, I don't think people, I think, don't, they judge everything in the past on how their life is today. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, hey, you have to pick up a history book and understand social economics of what it was like in any country 100 years ago. So I'm trying to think for your aunt and your mum, what their upbringing as children would have been like.
Well, and touching on what you just mentioned, and this kind of hypocrisy, right, is that people in the I want to say in the Arab world, they marry young,
Yeah,
and we criticize them, but like you said, we did it.
yeah.
You know, you feel that's
Oh yeah,
weird.
100%. I've had countless, and I'd like to say debates, but they end up being arguments, and it's just like, look, you have to understand social economics and history, because
Right.
we present morals today
Hmm.
that would not have lasted in an environment 100 years ago. It's because
Exactly.
it's. Look, I am sat here now. I've just finished a coffee that I made on a coffee machine. I have fresh water in a flask, and I'm talking to you thousands of miles away because of technology. Right?
Right.
You're in a nice, clean, crisp shirt. You're 65 and look 20 years younger. Right? Do you know what I mean? It's just
Yes.
like 100 years ago, that would not have been possible. And 100 years ago, if those circumstances were different, there would have been two avenues for you and I if we're neighbours. We're either getting along and doing fine by each other, or we're competing against each other. And that competition is life and death. But if we're having a good life and life is good, hey, we can share. But these are people that,
Yeah.
like you, I think you said your aunt was one of 8 or something like that. Okay, that's
Right.
8 mouths to feed when you might not even have 8
Mhm.
spoons to put in a mouth.
You're right. You're right. I like how you said that. You know, funny story. Let me digress on you. Okay. I went to see my uncle, kind of the youngest boy of the siblings, right? And this was back around 2000. I'll say, let's say 2000. And I got this wild hair that I didn't have any male mentoring in my life.
Yeah,
And but I got this uncle, like, I'm gonna go see him. So my aunt Kathy talked me into, I don't know how I allowed this, to make the trip too. So went to a town called Shreveport, Louisiana. So we're there, we get to this restaurant, and my first cousin, their dad, uh, comes to the restaurant late. And the girls were like, he's not gonna come in. He never go to the restaurant, he's not coming. So my aunt, with her arrogance, she like, I'm here. He knows I'm in here. He's coming in. So I'm like, this is weird, right? So we sitting there, we eating, and he's out there pacing back and forth, right? So all of a sudden, eventually, I don't know what hit him. Some hit him after about 20 minutes of pacing. He comes in, sits down right beside Aunt Kathy. And lo and behold, using that term, she started to feed him spoon after spoon. And he had to be mid 60s. She was like mid to late 70s. And I'm like, whoa, what is going on? But that was my weird Aunt Kathy. So
yeah,
that was the weirdness, like I said, in my family.
yeah. And this is these dynamics. They some, and this is a thing. What must have gone on when they were children?
Right, right. I mean, I can't, even at this age, I can't imagine my sister trying to feed me.
Yeah, this is what. Sorry, but
You
he somewhere in that man's mind, he has his own children, and
Right.
at 65, he goes into a restaurant and his sister feeds him.
Right. I mean, I could see if my sister said, "Hey, I cooked this or whatever taste is,"
Yeah, yeah,
you know, I could see I'm totally sick and and can't do it myself. You know,
yeah,
maybe her heart. I don't have a caregiver. Maybe she's like,
yeah.
but she better go through the check and balance before she try to think.
I tell this story often, and it's where I try to center myself about kind of who I am and where I am. So my mum is Irish, and I was lucky enough to know her mum and my nan, and she used to take me to Ireland sometimes on holiday, or my brothers and sisters, and there's this family home where they kind of like farmhouse that they all grew up in, and 13 became adults. I think there was a few child mortality, which was common at the time. But we used to walk past this water pump,
Okay.
and she would always tell me about when they were kids. You had to get up every morning with the buckets, walk up there, fill the water up, and and you're like,
Right.
yeah, I'm 9 years old now. That's not my fault. you know, but
Yeah, right.
but I remember talking to her sister, my great aunt Betty, and she was telling me, and this is that thing about they didn't think they were poor because this is just how life was. But
Right.
she said
Right.
she used to tell me, because you can imagine the Southern Ireland Catholics 100 years ago, sort of thing, and she said that they used to go to church twice on a Sunday, the family, but in two separate parties. And it all depended, because they didn't have enough shoes to go around. So it all depended on what size foot you were. So if you and your brother or you and your sister were both a size 5, well, one of you went to church in the morning and one of you went to church in the afternoon.
You know, those are the things. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I should never complain.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm
that's
saying?
what I
Like,
mean. This is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's just like, and I try to center myself, and I'm not good at it by any stretch of the imagination. I'll be moaning later because I don't like the coffee that I'm going to get in a coffee shop when I meet a friend. But in the back of my head, I'll be like, "You was talking to Harold earlier. How many pairs of shoes have you got?"
right. Really, right.
And this is right.
Right.
When I was setting up this morning, I had slippers on, and I was just like, "Oh, my feet are getting a bit clammy." So I've now put sandals on, so my feet are a bit cooler. And it's just like, whilst telling a story about how they used to have to share shoes because they didn't have shoes during the week, because they didn't need them. They only needed them for church.
Didn't he? God, Jesus. Oh man.
Yeah,
And you're right. I told my mother, my stepmother, when I got to Afghanistan, same kind of thing. I said, I thought I was poor. I said,
yeah,
said, oh, because we got to see, the citizens that, day to day to go to work. And I'm like, God, it was bad, how they live and all that.
yeah.
And I was like, man, I thought I was poor. And God, I wasn't. But speaking of being poor, and I talked about it in my book, my bullet, my aunt, and I'm finding a gift. I knew I was poor.
Yeah.
Didn't get any Christmas gift, never got any Christmas gift, none of that. So one of the stories in my bullet, my aunt, her final gift, I finally kind of took the bull by the horn. This Christmas, Santa Claus is gonna bring me something. I'm gonna write a poem. I'm gonna win the big play at church. I'm gonna do all my chores, be a good guy. I'm writing Santa Claus. I'm gonna docket, take these letters. So the parade was like the coming Monday. So anyway, during the play, my aunt stole that's part of her being the bully. She stole my poem and gave it to my brother. And so we ended up winning anyway because I kind of saved his butt.
Yeah.
But he couldn't perform my poem. But anyway, but because I did it, she wanted to punish me. No, you're not going to the Christmas parade. So I talked about it in the book how I sneaked off to the Christmas parade. So, I'm like, Santa gotta see me because this Christmas, and I'm only about 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this Christmas, he's gonna bring me something. I had been writing, these pen letters and getting return letters. And, so I'm like, do my poem and I tell him my good deeds. And so when I see him at the parade, I'm gonna give all this to him to let him know how great I've been. And this Christmas, I get a gift. And I'll let everybody read the story and find out what happened. But that was my big move. You're like,
Yeah.
it's gonna happen. So I sneaked off to the Christmas parade, unbeknownst to Cassie, and thought she's gonna catch me and made it back, without being noticed of leaving.
It's amazing when you're young, even in kind of adversity, you can have these big dreams.
Oh man, yeah. Oh yeah. You're
You know,
right. You're right.
you have these big dreams, and no matter what, it's meant to be, and it's gonna. And I tell you, it's a shame in a sense because when you're a kid, the energy and belief you have in that's going to happen, and somehow in adulthood, if you're not careful, you lose too much of that.
You're right. You're right.
You know.
You're right. I was about 22, and in my second stint in college, and I started to question why I hadn't made it. What was wrong? What's going on? And I promise you, I can't say when, but a voice said, "You don't have confidence."
Yeah.
It's like you're smart, you're a good person, you work hard, but you don't have confidence.
Yeah.
And when I just I won't say arrogance, no, but when I got that feeling of, okay, I'm gonna stand tall, be strong, speak up, it started to happen, you know. Yeah.
It's strange. I had a very emotional conversation with a guy I used to work with a few years ago yesterday, and he and I were working together 5-6 years ago, whatever, and we both went through a really 6-7 years ago actually went through a really difficult time. And we just happened to, because we were both in care work, we just used to have handovers on the same shifts at the same time. One of us would be starting as the other guy was leaving, or vice versa. And these handovers turned into like hour-long meetings where we just sit there like, what's your week been like? How my week? And we connected, like, we sporadically kept in touch. But for some reason, the last couple of days, we just were chatting a lot. And he was telling me about how helpful those conversations were. And I was just like, all right, well, this is how helpful they were to me. And we ended up kind of breaking down like a year's worth of conversation and what they meant to the other person. And we kind of come to this conclusion that the problem is that we never see ourselves the way other people can see us. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just listening to a guy that needs to offload. I'm just trying to be helpful, friendly. But he's then telling me like, what, that might have been the reason he got through the day. And I was just like, yeah, well,
Right.
that's what that was like for me. I look back on those conversations I had with him and the way he listened, and I was just like, those days when I thought, am I gonna, well, it's fine because I was talking to Vash, and it was. But you don't realise the magnitude of just that listening to somebody, and the impact it has on them. And like you say, so when you think you're doing everything right, and you can sit there questioning everything, like, when's this going to happen? And then that little voice just says, you just need some confidence. And
Right.
and just
Exactly.
it just like that, you're then like, oh right.
Hmm.
So that little piece of
Right.
the jigsaw puzzle it's
Hmm.
just there. And the reason I mention everything is because if Vash and I had just looked at ourselves the way that other people see us, we wouldn't have any
Hmm.
problems. Because we wouldn't be doubting everything. We would
Right.
realise actually there's people that genuinely really feel for you, genuinely love you, genuinely appreciate your time and efforts. But you can, if you're not careful, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, thinking that nobody has anything for you. And actually,
Right.
everybody's like, no, man, I'm rooting for you to win. I think you're amazing. I think you're doing great. And
Hmm.
because like I'm listening to everything you're telling me, and I'm like, wow, that kid must have been fantastic. What a great brother. It would have been. But your memories of that childhood is not the same. As
Yeah.
adults, when we talk about it, and you're just like, damn, that kid had courage. That kid had strength. But you grow up as an adult with no confidence. You're the most
Right.
confident kid on the block.
Right. Right. You're right.
But if you don't
You, you
see
you
it,
know the you know the weird thing, and I talked about I was ostracized because of my mom, and you know, and but because of my mom, people didn't want me around. They're like, he's the kid of the crazy lady,
Yeah.
you know.
Kids
So
are nice like that.
right, so I had very few friends, but the weird thing, the friends I had, or so-called friends, a lot of times they were so-called friends, weren't really friends, but um, when I was around them and their parents would say things to them like, you need to, you know, clean your room, or you need to do your homework, or, certain things they would instruct their kids, I would pick up.
Yeah.
And it became a part of me. And I took all those, I guess you can say, teaching or pushing that they were trying to give their kids. They started to mold me.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't getting it anywhere, how to be, how to dress, or, make sure you clean your room up. My mom rarely said anything, or do your homework or whatever. I wasn't getting any structure, but when I saw it and heard it in other people's household, it was going into me, and it made me a better kid, a better person. And those same kids, unfortunately, it went, over the head, and they did nothing with it,
Yeah.
and I did. And it's the weirdest mentoring. Like I said, I got tutored by other people's parents indirectly,
Yeah.
you know.
But it's like that thing, isn't it? You think you're poor, and then you go to Afghanistan, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
my life is good, and these kids think they have it. These you know what I mean? These kids think they
Yeah.
have it tough because their parents are moaning up to do homework,
Right.
and you're like, I'd love a parent that moaned me to do homework. Where's the
Right.
parent?
Right.
Do you know? But it's
Right.
subconscious. You just like there's a kid that's craving that, and
Right.
but the other kid is like, my life's unfair. I've got a roof over my head,
Right. It,
parents
it,
that care. They're feeding me, clothing me. I hate my parents, and you're like,
right.
I'd love those parents. And do you know what I mean? It's just we, and I think you just. I mean, this is the great thing about the people who write books and share their memories and tell their stories, because it gives people an opportunity to just, bearing in mind, an hour after you and I are finished, we're going to slip into this mental state. My life's not fair. It's really tough.
Right. Right. And when I was in Afghanistan, I got to meet some of the kids. We kind of weren't supposed to get too close
Yeah.
to them, but
Yeah.
you kind of couldn't. You couldn't help it, right? So there's the two kid. I want to say Abdul was one of the kids, and he was maybe like 10. Okay, and a lot of them wouldn't go to school. So I would get on them. Hey, why do you go to school?
Yeah.
Give a hard time. So one day, probably like middle of July, I go out, and his feet are coming out of the shoe, and I'm sitting there like him and his friend. I'm sitting there like, where are your shoes? He said, "It's all I got." I said, "You kidding?" He said, "No, it's all I got." Him and his friend. So I get out. I start putting my foot beside there, trying to get a good judge of what size they are, right? So I said, "Be right here. I'll be right back." So I drive over to the military base, the NATO base, and I buy two pairs of shoes. So come back, give them the shoes. I said, from now I want to see you wearing these shoes. So fast for about 2 weeks later, I come out of our camp and see the kids again, and they got on these same shoes. I'm like, "What are you doing? What happened to those shoes I got you?" They go, "Shoes finished." I'm like, "What? Shoes are finished?" Go, "What are you getting at?" They sold the shoes. I bought them and
Wow.
put their practice shoes back on.
Wow.
God, yeah, yeah. So, like I said, you only think you're poor until you see some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
just. It, yeah. That's what I
yeah.
mean. I mean, what do you do with that? Because you can't be angry, but you are angry,
Right, right.
and
God, man.
you got
And
to.
even the same, even they would be outside our camp. We'd come out to camp, go to work. Same thing. big camp coming in, the security let us in, and kids outside. So occasionally we would give him. We had water by the dust. I mean, water by the ton. I mean, you would
Mm.
trip over. That's how much water we had. You trip over a package of water. So occasionally we're like, here's some water. So you see them the next day or so, they're trying to sell you that water back to you. You know, you know.
I had the same experience. I was surfing in Morocco. So, and this is what I'm saying. I'm going to moan about my life whilst telling you a story about me flying to another country to go surfing, right? Because my life is difficult and it's not fair. And right,
You're right.
and we're on this like surf tour, and we're in the van. We finished surfing for the day. We've had our food. People have catered for us, because it's a difficult holiday, and people are preparing my food and everything. And I'm there washing water off my using water to wash sand off my feet, right? And as I come round to the back of the van, this local Moroccan, and you don't realise how poor they are, especially in the remote places, comes up and he's talking to me, and I don't know what he's saying. And the guide says, oh, he wants to know if you've got some spare water. And I'm just like, literally, just round the corner of the van is a big puddle of water draining into the sand because I washed my feet off because I didn't like sand on my feet, right?
Right, right.
So I give him a big bottle of unopened water and I hand it to him and said, there you go, have that. He then starts to bless me, saying a prayer
Wow.
and bless me for my generosity. And I'm
Right.
just like,
Wow.
oh, shit. Because that's the only fresh water he's going to have until he can get the next bottle off a tourist. Because turns out he lives nearby, fishes off the cliffs. And when I say lives nearby, he basically lives in a makeshift shelter outside, fishes, and then sells fish on the roadside. And that's how he makes his money. And so he has no running water, no electricity, no nothing. And he's blessing me for giving him a bottle of water.
Right.
And I just used another bottle to wash sand off my feet because I didn't want sand.
I understand. I
she's
understand.
just like, and she's just like, yeah. But and
Yeah,
it's
you
it's
have to
what do you
you have
do?
to watch what you do in their presence. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But
I
it's tricky
Go
because
ahead.
this man, because I'm then getting ferried back in a van to go to the
Mhm.
to the hostel, like the surf place we were staying in,
Right.
for somebody who's prepared my meals for me because it's part of the package I paid for.
Right. Right.
Do you
I
know what I mean?
understand. I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah. Well, like I said, I talked about my Aunt Kathy in the book, right? One of the things, she knew we were poor,
Yeah.
but she took, she'd get Jerry, my older brother, she'd give him anything, but she knew we were poor. So I would go to her house all the time, maybe at least once a week. She would have snacks, fruit, candies, just galore. I don't know where she got it. I think from work part of it. Or people would give her stuff and it would be all over her house. And she would never offer me any. I would go there. When I go there, the place would stink. It would be a stench of rotting fruit. She would never just, hey, I know you guys don't have anything at home to eat. I mean, even to this day, I still have the remnants of malnutrition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how poor, that's how hungry I
Mm.
was. But that was my Aunt Cassie, you know. And yeah, yeah.
Uh, uh,
And like I said,
are your mum or your aunt Cassie still around?
no, no, they're both passed on.
Yeah.
They're
And
both passed on.
how was that when they passed?
It was tough with my mom. Um, it just was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of like end of something, but quite about void. And like I said, even my first book, Surviving Chaos, I talked about after she passed, my mom would talk to the wall. And it's weird, she'd argue, she'd fight with the wall, I mean, for hours,
Yeah.
until she exhausted herself. And once she passed, and I talked about it in the book Surviving Chaos, I remember sitting there looking at the walls like, wonder if did the walls win or did my mom,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
just craziness,
yeah.
are they gonna miss her? This, I don't want anybody to think I'm crazy, but
I used to work.
yeah, it was a part of
Sorry, I was
it was
going
a part
to.
of her ritual.
Yeah, but this is
That's okay.
I was going to say I used to work in a day center for people that adults with learning disabilities or things like that, and I've worked with schizophrenics, and sometimes when I
Mhm.
would see them, like you say, arguing with somebody or talking to somebody, even today I'm convinced they were talking to somebody, because it's
Right. Wow. Wow.
because you'd look like you say that, and you think I don't I always. I don't want this to sound clumsy, but when you first start working with them, it would be very easy to just dismiss them as crazy, for want of a better term. And that's what I'm saying. I'm trying not to be rude or clumsy about it. But when you
Right.
spend
Right. I understand.
when you spend a bit of time with them and you can observe the intensity of the conversations they're having,
Uh-huh.
it does seem like, for all intents and purposes, it's a two-way dialogue. They're engrossed with something or someone. And I know what schizophrenia is, and
Yes.
I know what people will say, but I swear I know, like, everyone's going, well, of course they hear in voices, but no, it's like you and I having a conversation. It's like that's how real it was to them,
Right.
and it used to just make me think
Right.
that they could see things that I couldn't see, and that they
Right.
weren't so crazy, because I could see this consistency, like. And like I said, I've had the training. I've listened to the experts, but when you're just watching them all the time, and you can see them, so all of the eye movements, all of the reactions, it would be like if you filmed two people having an argument and then using
Mhm.
Photoshop software to delete the other person.
Right.
There's
Right.
a
Right.
synchronicity, and it always made me think
Right.
that they could just see something on a different level.
I mean, she would scream, shout, she would cuss, my mother, she would scream, she would cuss, she'd bang on the wall. And in my book, my bully, my aunt, and her final gift, I detail one of those episodes.
Yeah.
In the story, it's a story called Letter to Santa. And I talked about her preparation, how it all kicked in, and how she just started engulfing with the wall.
Yeah.
But that allowed me to step out because her attention was now on that wall. And so that allowed me to get out and go to the Christmas sleigh.
Yeah.
You know, but
Just
yeah.
just quickly, because I'm conscious of time. Where can people find you in your books?
Yes. You can find my books on Amazon. Um, also there's a place called Book Baby and go to Book Baby Bookshop. But My Bully, My Aunt, and Her Final Gift should be at all the Barnes and Noble,
Yeah.
Amazon,
Okay.
Book Baby Bookshop, all the major places. You can go to my website, riseandread.com, and find out more about other books or about me. But Amazon, uh, Amazon.com.
Okay.
My
And
Bully, My Aunt, Her Final Gift. Go ahead.
my last random question. I want you to imagine that you
Hmm.
can have access to a time machine. The time machine
Hmm.
is a car of your choice. So whatever car you
Okay.
want it to be.
Okay.
What car is it going to be? Where would you go? And what would be playing on the radio?
Wow. Oh man. I would go back when I was 22, 23. I like the Testarossa, the
Oh,
Ferrari
yeah, yeah.
Testarossa.
We talking Miami Vice, says Derosa.
Yeah, there you go. Um, I guess mentally I'm stuck there in that time warp. But it's more of and this is kind of romantic, I guess. I left the love of my life
Hmm.
around that time. I foolishly walked away. Um, yeah. So I even go with that song "In the Air Tonight"
Yeah.
by Phil Collins. We even go with that. Okay. Or Steve Perry.
And
What is it?
uh,
Oh, Sarah. I
yeah,
mean, oh, Sharon. Oh, Sharon.
yeah,
By Steve Perry.
uh,
Yeah, it's that the way he hit, I should have been gone.
yeah,
It just it hits me at a sore spot.
yeah,
It
yeah.
really does.
But
No,
on the great thing
yeah.
is, if you went back to then, you wouldn't look a day older anyway, so it's fine.
I appreciate I appreciate Mr. Watts.
Harold,
Oh boy.
it's been absolutely
Don't I wish.
fantastic. Yeah, no, man, you're looking good. You're looking good.
Same
Um,
here.
you're very welcome, and thank you very much for your time. I've had a great experience talking to you, and I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Appreciate you having me anytime.
And that was Harold, and this is me sitting precariously awkward with the office door open as my dog has entered the room as I was about to do this edit, and the door is wide open for her. So that was Harold, and please do check out his website, riseandread.com. And I've always fascinated just how much people can find a sense of humour later on in life about really difficult times, and how we can look back at who the child was and not see just their courage and their strength and their confidence and the humility about it all. It's just an amazing story, and hopefully Harold and I will be able to catch up again. And if you can hear my dog snoring, I do apologise. But as always, for everybody that listens and watches, thank you very much for the support, the comments, the likes, the people that share, and everybody that tunes in. Thank you very much. It is appreciated. And as always, wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you very much.